Coming up on Network Africa. Youngest son of deposed Libyan dictator, late Muammar Gaddafi, released after 10 years in Lebanese detention. Wife and son of former president of Gabon, Ali Bongo, face corruption trial in absentia. Plus, African leaders push for justice and reparations at the Addis Ababa summit in Ethiopia. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. The youngest son of the deposed Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, Hannibal, has been released by Lebanon after nearly 10 years in detention without trial. The Lebanese authorities seized 49-year-old Mr. Hannibal Gaddafi in 2015, accusing him of concealing information about the fate of a Lebanese Shia cleric who disappeared in Libya in 1978 when he was just 2. His lawyers say his $900,000 bill has been paid. Or back in October, a judge had set an $11 million bill against Gaddafi's release, but this was reduced last week after an appeal by his defense team. His lawyer, Mr. Bayon, says his client would leave Lebanon now for a confidential destination. In 2015, Mr. Gaddafi was briefly abducted by an armed group in Lebanon before being freed. He was later detained by Lebanese authorities. After his father was overthrown by rebels and killed in 2011, he fled to Syria and then had to live under house arrest in Oman with his wife. In Gabon, the wife and son of former President Ali Bongo are being tried in absentia on corruption charges. The trial for Sylvia Bongo Ondimba and Noureddin Bongo Valentin opened on Monday before a special criminal court, and it continues throughout this week. Mother and son are among 13 people accused of having misused the resources of the Gabonese presidency for their own gain. They were arrested in August 2023 after the coup that deposed President Bongo and put an end to the 55-year rule of the Bongo family. Sylvia and Noureddin Bongo spent about 20 months in detention until their release in May 2025. Overall, the defendants face 12 charges, including embezzlement of public funds, money laundering, active corruption, and forging of official documents. The 6th Conference on Land Policy in Africa is underway in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, bringing together African leaders, policymakers, and development experts. They are calling for sweeping land reforms to address poverty, inequality, and the legacy of colonial dispossession. The opening ceremony featured performances of traditional dances and spoken word monologues celebrating African identity and resilience. The 5-day conference is holding at the United Nations Conference Center from November 10 to 13, themed Land Governance, Justice and Reparations for Africans and Descendants of People of the African Diaspora. Jointly organized by the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank Group, and the UN Economic Commission for Africa, the conference aims to address the enduring impact of slavery and colonialism on land ownership.
The African Union leadership in this space has committed to dialogues and ensuring that this theme is implemented. As we look ahead, the AU is certain that the work of justice and reparations must be situated within Africa's contemporary development agenda, not as a historical afterthought, but as a pillar for sustainable transformation.
Land is the foundation of food security, social and sustainable economic development, and if managed equitably for the benefit of all citizens, it is the bedrock for social and political stability. Through our land reform programs, we are also establishing the basis for addressing the scourges of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and underdevelopment. The United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information has for more than a decade led the development of a coordinated global system for governing geospatial data. South Africa is currently serves as co-chair of the committee, representing the African continent, with the other co-chairs being Saudi Arabia and the United States of America. Through this position, Africa contributes directly to shaping the global policies and standards that ensure that spatial information supports sustainable development.
The United Nations Climate Conference has begun in Brazil with a call for faster action and more togetherness. More than 50,000 people are meeting in Berlin to define the future of the planet. Our correspondent Ayola Kasim has more.
It's the first day of COP and the queues are back. Long winding queue for registration, water, food, even to obtain a cashless payment card. That's because for the first time, a unified payment system is introduced as no other card or cash is accepted in the COP venue.
Bom dia a todos.
But right inside the main plenary, attention is focused on the matters at hand.
President Lula.
The Brazilian president reminds delegates and their governments to put people at the heart of the climate agenda.
Global warming could push millions of people to hunger and poverty, and that we can have setbacks of decades of advancement. The unproportional impact of climate change on women, Afro descent, migrants, and marginalized groups that should be taken into account in the adaptation policies.
Why climate disasters decimate the lives of millions when we already have the solutions? The head of the United Nations Climate Convention says this will never, ever be forgiven.
To falter whilst mega droughts wreck national harvests, sending food prices soaring, makes zero sense economically or politically. To squabble while famines take hold, forcing millions to flee their homelands. This will never be forgotten as conflicts spread. The economics of this transition are as indisputable as the costs of inaction.
So, delegates will now resume the first plenary meeting of COP30.
With the fourth version of the provisional agenda uploaded against the COP, many were expecting an agenda fight, but the COP presidency scored a first win with that, with what has been called a successful agenda ceasefire.
Of CMA 7.
For Nigeria, the head of the delegations says this is an implementation COP for the country aimed at having a clear shift from ambition to execution.
In terms of, one of my favorites, climate finance, the delivery, what we've done there, a major milestone was, of course, we all know, was the approval of our national carbon market framework. And this has set the tone for the way Nigeria really wants to be showcased. And it's clear that Nigeria is no longer preparing for implementation. We have entered the implementation phase, and we've backed it by governance structures, financial instruments, and robust measurable systems.
Meanwhile, civil society groups are pointing out that developed countries providing public finance is key to ensure that climate action does not create new debt traps or rely on false solutions that threaten equity and climate justice. From the Hunger Convention and Fair Center of the Amazon in Berlin, Brazil, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
Well, let's dive deeper into the climate discussion. Joining us now is Damilola Balogun, the project lead powering Lagos SMEs and the co-founder of the Youth Sustainable Development Network. It's a youth-led movement accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, as leaders continue discussions at COP30, what should Africa's, united message be when it comes to tackling climate change and especially protecting the continent's future?
Excellent. Great question. So I think it's very clear, right? With Nigeria, we struggle with a bit when it comes to socioeconomic development, right? And so for COP30, it is very instrumental that it leads to tangible developmental targets, right? And of course, at the cornerstone of developmental targets is finance, right? So in terms of pushing for finance, we must be rest assured and we must be confident that we are commanding the finance that will unlock opportunities as far as Africa is concerned. So there are different policies. There is the Mission 300 policy, right? So how do we fit this in to electrify over 300 million Africans? And of course, in terms of doing that, of course, is also creating job opportunities for young people between now and 2030 and even beyond, right? So as the Nigerian head of delegation has said, this COP30 is implementation, and Nigeria is already taking action. And taking action means that we are leveraging and we are commanding finance that, of course, brings prosperity towards other developmental targets, such as job opportunities, youth deployment, and, of course, every other things that revolve around climate action and even sustainable development as a whole.
Talking about, turning pledges into progress, we know past climate summits, some of which you've attended, have promised big promises, but we've seen limited results. What concrete outcomes should Africans now, demand from COP30 happening in Brazil? And particularly, how can we really ensure that these commitments are actually delivered?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's important that we also paint a bit of background to this. So, of course, the Rio X Summit started in Brazil itself, in Rio, and then 33 years after, it's returning back to Brazil. So it's a moment of accountability. And again, of course, it's also important to highlight that the Paris Agreement is 10 years, the one that established the 1.5 degrees, and of course, the establishment of the nationally distributed distribution, right? So at the end of the day, it is crucial that we are able to see that we want to be able to check our accountability. And more recently, the COP29, new finance for developing countries, right? At the end of the day, it is very crucial that we are able to merge all of what has been done so far with our current policies. So I'll say Nigeria, for example, there is a Nigerian energy transition plan. How are we able to position this policy to be able to drive the necessary investments that commands that we need over 400 billion US dollars above business as usual spending, right? So at the end of the day, if we're able to tailor all of these, our policies into action and then speaking with one voice as Africa, of course, we will be able to make it a value-driven type of exchange, right? Not to say that we emit less, which is already a fact. At the end of the day, we have to understand and come from a value creation and exchange perspective. And it might interest you to know again that Africa has about 60% of the world's best solar resources, and we have only 1% installed capacity up to date, right? So it means that there are a lot of opportunities in terms of what the world is talking about in terms of climate change. We also have the UAE consensus from COP28, which is saying we need to triple renewable energy access. And we have these resources, both natural and human. So how can we combine all of this together to be able to position in terms of a value exchange and value creation perspective? That definitely would put us on the right path and make us command prosperity that would drive the continent forward.
Hinging on your comments of, speaking with one voice across the continent, we have young people and local activists that, are driving climate action. How can the African youth really amplify their efforts and make their voices, part of this global decision-making process? Because in the end, I mean, it affects one and all.
Yeah, excellent. That's a fantastic question, because at the end of the day, again, statistics shows that over 60% of Africa's population are between the ages of 15 to 30, right? So it's mostly young people. So I think it's, again, to change the perspective, we don't have to see young people as mere beneficiaries. We need to see them as co-creators. We need to be able to entrust them with meaningful projects, right? As much as capacity building is important, it is important to train young people, which is what my network does, for example. At the end of the day, we must be able to put action. We must be able to support young people who are even driven to push towards what sustainable development really entails for Africa. And bear in mind that it is sustainable development, right? It's to ensure that what we do today does not affect the next generation. And the next generation that is yet to be born actually have to benefit from whatever policies or implementation we are working towards. So it's about changing the narrative as simply as positioning young people not just as mere beneficiaries, but as co-creators, genuinely doing that. Of course, we have a lot to unlock in terms of in terms of knowledge, in terms of strength, in terms of energy to drive development, even beyond climate change, beyond sustainable energy as a whole, right? At the end of the day, innovation is synonymous to youth. And then if we position and we harness all of that together, definitely we can position young people to drive the future forward.
Thank you very much, Damilola Hamid Balogun of the Youth Sustainable Development Network. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a break now on the program. Still to come. Ghana welcomes the return of its artifacts from the United Kingdom and South Africa. We'll give you more details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. Botswana's President Duma Boko is looking to transform his country into Southern Africa's transport and trade hub. He made this known during his State of the Nation address in Gaborone. During his speech, he says the nation's strategic location positions it as a vital hub for trade and connectivity. According to him, Botswana would push for a majority stake in De Beers, with both his country and Angola positioning to take control of the Anglo-Americans' diamond division, and reports that they could divide the firm between them.
Botswana provides critical connectivity to Southern Africa, being a key transit route to countries such as Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, and South Africa through the north-south and the Trans-Kalahari corridors. As a transit country, Botswana is poised to play an important role in facilitating intra-Africa trade, as the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement has commenced. Our transport legislation and standards are to be reviewed, harmonized, and aligned with economic communities' expectations. In line with the commitment of transforming Botswana into a transport hub for the 360 million strong SADC market, the government intends to improve the national roads network through high-quality tolled roads to ensure sustainability in the development and maintenance of roads in Botswana. In this regard, construction of the A3 road has commenced, while feasibility for the A1 dual carriage tolled road spanning over 600 kilometers is scheduled to commence before the end of this year.
A delegation from the Rwanda Development Board, RDB, and the private sector partners from Rwanda have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry to deepen trade relations between Nigeria and Rwanda for economic growth. Participants believe that the potentials are huge and it covers diverse sectors.
The High Commission of the Republic of Rwanda has convened this meeting to share their progress with the target of fostering a closer relationship with Nigeria. They pride themselves as being one of Africa's fastest growing and most dynamic economies, achieving an average GDP growth of over 7% annually.
So inviting you to invest in Rwanda is not actually only about bringing money there. It's about bringing yourself, your families, communities, and bringing them together so that we build people who do know each other, people who can feel home wherever they are, and by moving one side and coming in the other one, what it does bring is actually strengthening relationship, strengthening partnership, strengthening Africanness.
For Nigerian investors, this means that Rwanda offers a partner regime that aligns closely with the ambitions in trade, manufacturing, value addition and regional integration.
So much easier to invest in many African countries than to invest in your own country. In terms of the paperwork and all the hassle you have to go through. But I think it's good for Africa. As we speak, Nigeria, on every year, this is a statistic some of us take for granted or do not know. Every year in the last 5 to 10 years, Nigeria is either the second or the first largest investor in Ghana. Ghana have the statistics. Ask them. Nigeria, every year when they come out with the foreign investor statistics, Nigeria is either the first or second. Nigeria is always competing with China every year.
The relationship is sealed with the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between LCCI and Private Sector Federation of Rwanda to underscore a mutual commitment to building strong and sustainable business links. And a taste of the Rwandan culture ends the meeting.
So health matters now. The Lagos State Health Management Agency has deepened its financial inclusion drive for informal sector workers through the Nigeria-Rwanda Cooperative and Multipurpose Society. It's an initiative aimed at ensuring wider access to affordable health insurance coverage for residents. Speaking at the inaugural general meeting of the Health Initiative, the Permanent Secretary of LASHMA, Dr. Emanuela Zamba, says the cooperative, established in partnership with the Lagos State Council of Tradesmen and Artisans, is part of efforts to bring informal sector workers under the state's social health insurance scheme, Ilera-Eko. Dr. Zamba also says the cooperative initiative provides flexibility payment for those in the informal sector, while the cooperative remits the full premium upfront to LASHMA.
The Nigeria-Rwanda Cooperative. This is a cooperative that was set up in partnership with LASCOTA, which we know is the body for informal sector artisans in Lagos State. This was launched in December of last year, and it is essentially something that we have put up as a financial inclusion strategy to be able to pull in the informal sector onto the Ilera-Eko social health insurance plan. When they join the cooperative, even though they will be paying instrumentally, the cooperative pays their money upfront to the agency so that they will continue to get good health care, seamless health care for the entire 1 year. And there are other benefits that they also get, such as access to loans. They get referrals for everybody that they refer to the cooperative. They get cheap food because we have partnership with farmers. They will have travels and tours, so there will be prizes and raffle tickets and things like that that we do that is of benefit to them. And other goodies that are impact, so that is a value add. It's not just joining a cooperative for health insurance. There are other things that improve the quality of your life. And Mr. Governor has now made it mandatory with the executive order that came out in 2024. The agency has been putting the planning into process right now, and we are going to start enforcement in 2026 by the grace of God, so that people will not only, but this is all we are doing now is to build public awareness, ensure we set up an emergency services program, ensure that we have an online radio station, ensure that there is a way for you to verify that you are on the plan, and so on and so forth, including the public awareness. And we feel that we've done that for quite a while now, so we will begin to enforce come next year, because this is something that, people need to understand that it is actually for their benefits.
Ghana's Asante King has welcomed the return of 130 gold and bronze artifacts from the UK and South Africa, some of which were looted during colonial times and others bought on the open market. The items include royal regalia, drums, and ceremonial gold weight dating back to the 1870s and reveal the cultural role gold played in the Asante society. Well, 25 of the pieces were donated by British art historian Hemmany Waterfield and the rest by South African mining company Anglo Gold Ashanti. Well, the King Ofumtwa Osei Tutu II thanked Anglo Gold Ashanti for voluntarily returning the artifacts legitimately acquired on open markets. The monarch says this reflects goodwill and respect for the source and legacy of the Asante Kingdom. And as we end the program today, here's our fun fact about the continent. Did you know that Namibia is the second least densely populated country on Earth and is home to one of the world's oldest deserts, the Namib, believed to be around 80 million years old? Namibia also has a large population of free-roaming cheetahs and is the first African country to put environmental protection in its constitution. And that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.